All right, welcome to week 5 and welcome to the first weekly discussion for Unit 2. Similar to week 3's discussion of federalism, this week we are learning about some of the fundamental principles related to the Bill of Rights. This chapter, chapter 4, highlights the extent of the framers' commitment to limited government. The difficult part about learning civil liberties, learning about civil liberties, is that there are a lot of Supreme Court decisions that you need to take the time to learn and understand, as well as knowing about the 10 amendments that comprise the Bill of Rights and several other amendments, particularly the 14th Amendment. More on that in a moment. In no small way, learning Supreme Court case law and the content of the amendments is simply a matter of memorization. This is a sort of subject that was made for 3x5 index cards. Just write constitutional amendments and Supreme Court decisions on the blank side, and then describe that amendment or decision on the other side, and then just go through them over and over again. I hate to say it, but that's often the best way to learn a lot of this kind of material. One of the most important parts of this chapter is the incorporation doctrine, which refers to the Supreme Court's interpretation of the 14th Amendment's due process clause, that the 14th Amendment effectively extends the Bill of Rights to the states. As I mentioned in week 3, 19th century Supreme Court jurisprudence was that the Bill of Rights only constrained the actions of the federal government. So now, subsequent to the ratification of the 14th Amendment, federal courts can hold state policies are discriminatory, can view that they discriminate, and incorporation also means that Congress is empowered to remedy instances where states are discriminating against minorities or other vulnerable groups. Incorporation makes civil liberties claims against states feasible. So you can't understate how important the 14th Amendment is. As for the Bill of Rights guarantees, what are we to make of the Second Amendment? The current view of the Supreme Court is that the Second Amendment guarantees an individual right to possess firearms. Has that always been the Supreme Court's interpretation? If you actually look at the wording of the Second Amendment, it reads, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Does that complex sentence mean that all individuals have an absolute right to any kind of gun? Currently, it's easier in some states for a person to buy an AR-15 than to operate a car. Is that a sustainable state of affairs? I am open to your Second Amendment related questions. I'll offer my viewpoint. My view is that the intent of the writers of the Second Amendment was for the states to have the capacity to form, train, and maintain state militias. Members of the founding generation were primarily worried about the threat of a central government with a standing army infringing upon the right of the states to manage their internal affairs. I do not believe that the framers saw the individual right to own a gun as unlimited. More importantly, and again, this is strictly my opinion, I don't believe the framers intended to front-load rebellion into the political community they were constructing. I think they probably would have viewed that as a recipe for, dissolution. The framers lived in a world where basically the most lethal weapons were muzzle-loading rifles with an accuracy of a couple hundred yards. In contrast, today we have weapons designed for the battlefield being marketed, mass marketed as these sexy things that everyone needs to own. The mass marketing of high-velocity weapons has contributed to the increasing prevalence of their deployment in mass shootings. And I do believe that a mostly unregulated gun market is unsustainable. I am, sure that some of you passionately disagree with me, and I welcome a reasoned debate on the subject. No one who takes an opposing view to me need to fear for their grade in the course. I had a student several years ago who, when we started our discussion about this material, observed, "Why are there so many amendments in the Bill of Rights dedicated to protecting criminals?" And I thought, what a great question. Does anyone in the class want to venture an answer? Why are the majority of the amendments that comprise the Bill of Rights dedicated to protecting the rights of individuals accused of a crime? Here's a clue. It has something to do with the framers' commitment to limited government. All right. I find the 4th and 8th Amendments to be particularly interesting in terms of demonstrating the framers' commitment to limited government. The 4th Amendment constrains the ability of police to simply kick down your door and search your house. Police have to respect due process. In order to obtain a search warrant, they have to present to a judge evidence that gives them a reasonable suspicion that you are planning a crime or that you have committed crimes and have evidence of that activity in your home. The Supreme Court has constrained the ability of police and intelligence agencies from wiretapping or using surveillance equipment to eavesdrop on citizens. Again, they need a warrant. The USA Patriot Act eroded some of those Fourth Amendment protections, and some law enforcement agencies think they need to be further, that they need further authority to better combat terrorism. What do you think? Where's the balancing act here? The Eighth Amendment is designed to prohibit cruel and unusual punishment. What do you think the framers meant by that term? I suspect that they wanted to forestall the imposition of torture as a form of punishment, which was commonplace in Europe well into the 18th century. However, the problem with the phrase cruel and unusual is that it relies on what we consider to be a community standard of what constitutes, cruel and unusual. For many Americans, the infliction of death is perfectly acceptable. For others, there is no way to kill someone without inflicting cruel and unusual punishment. My problem is that especially as it relates to the death penalty, and why I think that it might violate the Eighth Amendment, is that it's irrevocable. And, I don't think that any government is perfect. Even with due process, it's likely that the state will kill innocent people. My belief in limited government causes me to believe that we should not give the state the power to simply kill people as a punishment. We otherwise grant the state considerable authority to kill in other circumstances. Again, what do you think? Again, let's talk about it. This is good stuff, right? Another important issue related to civil liberties is privacy. Do we have a right to be left alone? How far can we push that right? Do we have a right to consume drugs that others might view as dangerous? Do we have a right to engage in sexual relations with others that, with other people that some might view as profoundly immoral? Do we have a right, if we are in the terminal stages of a disease, to end our lives? As a country, our views regarding the right to privacy are increasingly fluid, and it's hard for me to say where the line is on a lot of those issues. Again, what do you think? I welcome your privacy questions. All right, hopefully I've provided enough fodder for an interesting discussion. I think this is one of the most fun weeks to talk about and chew on some of these issues. As always, remember, dissent is the hallmark of a healthy democracy, and also questions are important. If you ask the right questions, you will get great answers. All right, let's have a great week.